Hey everyone, Keep7 here, back with another Magic the Gathering Arena video, and today we're doing another card discussion, and today we are talking about Duress. Duress, hey Krieger, it's my cat if you can hear him. Duress is a 1-mana sorcery, 1 black mana sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards this card. Anybody who's played Magic, I would assume, knows about this card, because it's... hey buddy. It's prevalent in Standard. It's been reprinted a bunch of times. Obviously, Historic has better options like Thoughtseize, but it's been reprinted so much that I'm, if you play Magic, you've probably heard of this card or seen this card or played with this card. So let's talk about it in a vacuum. So in a vacuum, the card looks pretty good. You get to see your opponent's hand, and in a game of Magic, information can win you the game, or, information can lead to wins. Obviously, that information doesn't remain viable for long as the game progresses, but still, knowing what is in your opponent's hand, especially if you're playing an opponent you haven't played before, you don't know what deck they're playing, maybe opening with this could be beneficial. You could see what's in their hand and figure out what they're playing, if they're combo, control, this, that, the other thing. So there is some value there. It's also, depending on when you play it, could be more valuable later in the game as opposed to a turn 1 play. A turn 1 play might be you're playing an opponent for the first time, you don't know what they have, yada, yada, yada. As you play more, opponents, or if you played an opponent before, you know what deck they're playing, or if you're in a game 2, game 3 situation, you can hold on to the Duress until you know when their combo is going to go off, or you know that they have something in their hand, or if you're playing control, on a crucial turn where you don't want something to get countered, you can play this, get the counter out of their hand, yada, yada, yada. So, in a vacuum, looks like a very good card. Well, looks like a very good card. It has its uses against control and combo. Definitely strong against those types of decks. Has some setbacks in that obviously it's limited to non-creature, non-land spells, so it's probably best for combo and control things that are using spells or planeswalkers to try to gain an advantage in the game. Where this card belongs, probably in sideboards, sometimes main deck. If you're in Standard, could be a sideboard or main deck option. If you're in Historic or even further back again, you have things like Thoughtseize, so you shouldn't probably be playing this card. But who knows? So why is this card probably not as good as you think? So this card, it's difficult to explain, and it can be kind of difficult to put into perspective without sounding kind of simple, because at face value, it's bad because of exactly what it is. Discard is always kind of disadvantaged because more often than not, discard is being played on your turn, or making your opponent discard discard. Almost all discard spells are played at sorcery speed. So this being a sorcery is kind of what sets it back. If you're kind of trying to decide between two options, counter spells and discard, counter spells will win out because counter spells can be played on your opponent's turn, whereas discard has to be played on your turn. And when you're kind of making this trade, when you're making your opponent discard a card, and here's the thing, normal discard is worse than Duress, because Duress actually gives you the option of making them discard something. So that makes it a lot better than normal discard, where normal discard is just your opponent discards a card. So you're just getting normal discard, you're just making your opponent get rid of their worst card, which is terrible. That's a terrible exchange for you. If you have to pay mana to let them discard a card of their choice, that's absolutely horrible for you. And the reason is tempo. This card gains some tempo in that it lets you choose what they discard, so you can choose their big combo piece, maybe their counter spell that's going to get rid of something that you want, that will counter something that you want to resolve. Essentially helping you you can save tempo where normal discard can't. You can take something that would have prevented some sort of tempo swing in the game with this card, whereas normal discard, you're just getting rid of their worst card in their hand, or you're allowing them to get rid of their worst card in their hand, and you're not giving yourself the choice. So that's where this card is better than normal discard. But again, at face value, either discard or, normal discard or Duress, or, discard where you get to choose the target of what gets discarded. it's always kind of a bad exchange for you in that you're trading a card on you're paying mana and trading a card on your turn for them to discard a card that you get to choose. And I know that sounds exactly like the definition of a card. You're like, how is that a bad thing? That's what the card is. But another way to look at it is you kind of flip the scenario around. You're your opponent, and essentially what they've done is paid 0 mana on your turn for one of your cards. So, it's a 1-for-1 exchange, and they paid 0 mana for it. Again, because you get to choose, you can take crucial things like a counter spell, you can take a combo piece, a removal spell, something like that. So you can kind of save tempo, but save some tempo. You can kind of gain some back for yourself depending on what you choose, where you are in the game. It's obviously all very subjective. You could play a Duress and it could win you the game because you got rid of their crucial combo piece. They weren't able to go off. They were kind of stuck doing nothing, or you got rid of removal that would have gotten rid of your Baneslayer Angel that was going to swing for lethal next turn. Obviously, I'm not saying that the card is bad. I'm just saying the card is worse than you might normally think it is, because of just that way of looking at it. There are obviously arguments to be made, either way, but in my opinion, it is a great card. Very situational, obviously very subjective, depends on where you play it, when you play it, and you really have to know when and how to play it. You have to know your opponent, what deck they're playing, to make this card valuable, to make this card good. Because played in the wrong situations and, played with, played at the wrong times and, with no targets, you can really lose a lot of tempo, and it can really prevent you from progressing your game and possibly winning. Another way to kind of compare it is, another thing that kind of, the best way to save tempo that we all know about is counterspells. Counterspells are one of the best ways to save tempo. I mean, that's what they do. They prevent your opponent from playing something on their turn. You get to prevent your opponent playing something on their turn with a counterspell. And what this card doesn't do is it's played on your turn, so you have no idea what's going to come up off the top of their deck. So you get rid of whatever the best card is in their hand, right? Like you get rid of their big combo piece, you get rid of their counterspell, but then they can draw something else off the top. Whereas a counterspell, you get that extra card to look at, and not necessarily look at, but if the top card of their deck is the card that's going to win them the game and they draw it and you have the counter for it, you get to counter it on their turn. That's a huge tempo swing, blah, blah, blah. With Duress, you're paying the mana on your turn and you don't get protected from whatever that top card might be. So that's another way to look at it. So there's a lot of reasons why this card is great, and there's a lot of reasons why this card isn't so great, or maybe not as great as people think. Does that mean that it doesn't belong in your sideboard? Absolutely not. This card absolutely does belong in your sideboard. It is 100% playable and a very good card. But you also have to think, you really, really have to time this card well. You have to know when to sideboard it in, and when it's important, when it's not, and what cards... I mean, obviously, you'll be able to determine what cards you need to target based on who you're playing, but I guess that's just one way to look at it. And I guess what I'm really saying is, why does this card sometimes feel less great to cast than your counter spells? And that's really the reason. So that's kind of the breakdown. That's the card in a nutshell. That's kind of the card. And I mean, there's not much really to say, so this doesn't need to be a 40-minute video about Duress. But yeah, that's kind of what these videos are for. Just a way for you to take a look at a card and maybe see it from a different perspective. Rather than just reading the card and reading all the text on the card at face value, just thinking about it in a different light and maybe giving you a little bit of a, different perspective on cards and why they're valuable and why they're not. But yeah, so that's it for this video. That's Duress in a nutshell and why it's good and why it's not. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll catch you in the next one. Later.